I remember one time when I was 8 years old, my mom was making dinner. She yelled at me to come eat, but I was busy watching the Spongebob episode where they're in rock bottom. My mom comes in and says that you've seen this episode 100 times, you're not missing anything, come eat. But I didn't care. I was glued to that television. I was hooked. It was just so good that I could watch it 1,000 times over and laugh at something new each time. There was always something new to care about, and even if I've seen every episode 1,000,000 times over, I still wanted to watch it again and again until my brain rotted. This is how early episodes of SpongeBob were, constantly rewatchable for dumb kids that just wanted to laugh. It held something insanely distinct from most other cartoons at the time. It was so wacky and so goofy that its mere existence just seemed fake. I mean, a talking sponge lives in a pineapple working at a McDonald's for a money-hungry crab? What kind of premise is that? That's insane. That's a kind of premise that can only come from someone truly wanting to put their heart into the most wackiest entertainment for kids. And the man who came up with that premise is Steven Hillenburg. SpongeBob was his creation. It was his idea. He was a teacher of marine biology for many years who noticed how the kids that he taught were just so in love with the world of undersea creatures, so he created this little educational comic book for his school that slowly evolved into the idea of SpongeBob SquarePants himself. From the very beginning, SpongeBob SquarePants was an idea formed from passion and creativity to entertain but also educate. Before SpongeBob even aired a pilot episode, it had more heart put into it than anything else around it, because it was made by one guy who wanted to make kids laugh with marine life. And so SpongeBob SquarePants became one of the most popular cartoons to ever exist, with the first 3 seasons being some of the funniest, most well thought out episodes of cartoon television that still hold up to this day. I mean, I literally have been rewatching so many of these episodes and they are just perfect. In animation, voice acting, comedy, it's insane. When I say these episodes are funny, I mean they are funny. Not exhale through your nose funny, not laughing emoji funny. They are loud, snorting funny, man. They're loud funny, you know? This was everything. This was amazing, but it could not last this good, this perfect forever, and Steven knew that, leading him to focus on the very next evolution in the SpongeBob universe. When season 3 of SpongeBob SquarePants ended, Steven left the show to focus on a movie. He wanted to put his whole heart and soul into a massive movie. He knew that focusing on the show and the movie at the same time just wouldn't leave him comfortable to focus on both, so he just fully focused on the movie. And when that movie dropped in 2004, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, oh baby, this was a celebration of SpongeBob, a true love letter to the franchise and everything it represents. It didn't just feel like another episode but longer, or just another TV special or anything. It was a movie to be seen by everyone. It was what many believed to be a perfect ending for SpongeBob himself. Even Steven thought that himself. Steven then left the show for a while. The show continued to decrease in quality and became just another dumb kids show. Soon Steven expressed his desire to return, even though he himself was struggling to come up with new stories for SpongeBob. He and another longtime showrunner for SpongeBob, Paul Tibbitt, worked on creating a brand new movie. With Tibbitt directing and Steven just writing, we got SpongeBob SquarePants: A Sponge Out of Water. And to be honest, the movie just isn't anything special. It doesn't hold a candle to what the first one represented, and honestly just feels like another episode of the show that aired after Steven's first departure. It holds a lot of references to old episodes, but feels very disjointed and very marketable for trailers rather than be anything else. It felt like it was made of fans of SpongeBob and people who have worked on the show since the beginning, but without the true heart and passion that came from Steven's directing of the very first. Soon after the movie, it came out that Steven suffered from ALS, and he sadly passed away at the end of 2018. Steven created a beautiful, iconic legacy for many of us to enjoy to this day. He created a great show and what he believed to be the perfect ending to his own show, and while he came back for one last hurrah, that wasn't my favorite, it still felt more SpongeBob than the most seasons did for years. But after his death, oh man, after his death, Nickelodeon said, oh, we could do anything. We could do anything with SpongeBob now. And so their first movie immediately after his death was a literal ad for new spin-off shows. A movie that exists to advertise a SpongeBob baby show, SpongeBob SquarePants Sponge on the Run. It is the most egregious and disgusting things I have ever seen. At first time watching this movie, I was like, oh, it's not that bad, until a certain part of the movie that just left me speechless. It led me to curse Nickelodeon and Viacom with a vengeance. It left me angry, man. It left me upset. I hate it. It's disgusting. It's so bad. It's just not good. Not at all. But these are the 3 SpongeBob movies that we have right now. And it's crazy to see how they simply just show a downward trajectory on a graph of sucking. From 1 to 3, the quality has just declined from peak to piss. So today, let's go over all 3 and compare just how hard they have fallen off. Starting with the first one feels almost unfair. It's literally so good that it feels wrong to compare it to the other two movies. Apparently I was taken to the theater to see it, but I barely remember that because I was 5 years old. But I have watched this movie endlessly on loop for years and years to come, and so did so many. The thing is that this movie just feels like a celebration of SpongeBob. The movie just has this absolutely perfect opener. We see a bunch of pirates in the middle of the ocean, which instantly brings us to the fact that this movie is bigger and has more of a budget than all of the TV episodes. There's a reason that it's a movie this time around, and they're gonna show us. There's these cute, smelly pirates singing the opening song in the most adorable little sequence, and all of this is because they have tickets for the SpongeBob movie itself. OMG, that's the movie I'm watching right now. They're going to see it too. That's crazy. The Simpsons movie did the same thing 3 years later, and to be honest, they didn't even do it as good. Wow, Simpsons, you're ripping off SpongeBob? That's not cool. As the SpongeBob movie begins in front of these smelly pirates, we're brought into this intense bomb defusal type situation where SpongeBob is called upon to save a man's life and bring him cheese to his Krabby Patty. Now, this is all just a dream, but it shows us just how confident SpongeBob is in himself and how much he thinks that other people rely on him. He loves himself and he thinks that he's deserving of a reward for all of his hard work over the years as a fry cook at the Krusty Krab. He holds a wall of Employee of the Month awards that stretch longer than even conceivable, so of course this man is deserving of that, right? Of course he should be given the big promotion that he's been dreaming of his whole life.
I'm ready. Promotion.
Oh man, if only life was that sweet, my boy. We then see SpongeBob get dressed in a bunch of great gags that throw us off in each step, and this is a good representation of the humor for this movie and the early episodes of SpongeBob. This is exactly what you won't see in the next two movies in literally any single way. Like, it's small, but when SpongeBob grabs a toothbrush with just 2 bristles on it, you think it's for his buck teeth, obviously, but no, the trick is that he goes for his 2 eyes instead. It throws you off, and this happens consistently throughout the movie. It's small, it's witty, it's cute, and it adds up a lot when this kind of thing happens a lot. And the next 2 movies are completely void of any kind of visual gag such as that. Instead, it's just loud, obnoxious yelling without context or point. When we see SpongeBob greet Patrick in this movie, they yell. They yell to each other because they have something to be excited about. It's a big day. They're good friends, they're dumb kids, and they're just insanely happy.
Oh, thanks, Patrick. And tonight, after my big promotion, we're gonna party till we're purple.
I love being purple!
Meanwhile, cut to the 3rd movie, and they just start yelling to simply yell, just to annoy Squidward. Why are they yelling? No reason. That's the joke. That's the joke of the beginning of the movie, that they're just yelling. They have no reason to yell. We see the Krusty Krab is having a grand celebration of a new restaurant right next door, the Krusty Krab 2. Oh, great gag. Classic. Mwah. We see Plankton, the series titular bad guy. He freaks out over the new Krusty Krab and how he's never even had a little taste of that success. The greatness of seeing this in this movie is that it feels like the ultimate SpongeBob story. You've had all of these episodes with a spiteful Plankton wanting to steal a recipe, and he's never succeeded. So obviously for a movie, it's perfect to bring that kind of dynamic into the focus. But it gets stale, it gets boring when it's also the focus of every movie to come after it. You did it once, and then you did it again and again. Why? In this movie, it feels like the dynamic is reaching its climax, its literal peak. Plankton's always failed and has shown to try quite literally everything, or so he thought. And he pulls out this juicy, delicious Plan Z, and he realizes that he has one more great chance to win against the Krusty Krab and crew. This is simple, gorgeous, and poetic, which I cannot for the life of me even attempt to say about the next 2 movies' plots. The great thing is that during all of this, the animation shows such a grotesque, hand-drawn moments from time to time that give you just such a gut reaction that you can't help but chuckle at. While Plankton is yelling to himself about his new plan, SpongeBob steps on him, leading for a horrific screech from Plankton. Plankton tells him how much he wants to rule the world, and SpongeBob says, "Good luck with that." Plankton then calls him
Stupid kid.
a kid. A kid. Oh, a kid, you say? I wonder if that's going to be important or something. At the Krusty Krab ceremony, Mr. Krab starts to announce the new manager for the Krusty Krab 2, with SpongeBob being so unbelievably excited that he doesn't hear when Krab announces that it's not him, it's Squidward.
Yes! Yeah!
SpongeBob believes him to be the manager. I mean, of course he does. He's been the hardest working man in the industry for years, but in Krab's eyes, he's just a kid.
You're just a kid.
This is how everyone else views him, and the only one that doesn't really view him like that is himself. and Patrick, I guess. We then see Plankton go to King Neptune's castle. Oh god, what's he gonna do? What is he up to? We then see King Neptune, who, with just this movie alone, becomes such an iconic character. With all of his tiny scenes, he makes such an important impact that I just can't say about the other characters in the later movies. Neptune in this movie is a strict, ruling dumb guy who asks for things but contradicts himself when people do the things that he's asked of them. He's a balding man who feels strongly insecure about it, and so he keeps his crown close to him as a symbol of authority. But whoa, Plankton has stolen it. He's stolen the crown. What? Why would he do that, dude? That's so not cool. That's rude. We then see SpongeBob at the Goofy Goobers, where he cries his poor little soul out. Him and Patrick then get shit-faced drunk with ice cream. I mean, it's so simple, and you wouldn't really think about it except just laughing at it. But having SpongeBob being told that he's a kid by so many people around him, and then getting drunk off of ice cream is so great. It's so simple, but so well done. He even has a disgusting, crusty hangover afterwards, where he's late to work for the first time ever. But that doesn't worry him because he's angry about what happened to him yesterday and not getting the recognition that he deserves.
Mr. Krabs.
King Neptune then arrives at the Krusty Krab and thinks that Mr. Krabs stole the crown. SpongeBob then arrives, drunkenly defacing Krab's character to Neptune, which causes Krab to get freezed, with a deal made that SpongeBob must get the crown back in 6 days or Krabs will be executed. Oh no. This means that SpongeBob finally has a chance to prove himself responsible and adult. Even when he must save that one guy that disrespected him so many times over, SpongeBob's good heart still wants to set out and save his crabby ass. We also have Mindy, who was the one who helped convince Neptune to let our boys go on this quest to save the day. Mindy is sweet, and Patrick has a nice little crush on her. The boys then head out with the help of the Patty Mobile, a clever way to create a joke for the audience, but also get around the fact that SpongeBob does not have a license.
You don't need a license to drive a sandwich.
But when Frozen Krabs is left all alone in his solitude, Plankton just waltzes in there and grabs the secret formula for the Krabby Patties. It's a sad day, a very sad day indeed. However will this be fixed? I don't know. I don't know. I've never seen this movie before. I don't know what's gonna happen. How's the day gonna be saved? Very soon the boys lose their car, stolen by a handsome man. I may not see his face, but everything else I see, I like. I like Big Ben. But on the flip side, small man Plankton is already selling Krabby Patties. He's doing it. He's doing what he's always dreamed of, and he's getting success through his crimes. He has the whole of Bikini Bottom fooled and sends a terrifying, ominous guy after the boys to cover up the rest of his tracks. We get a great gag of Plankton hyping him up as the most terrifying being ever, just to be named Dennis. Now that's a good joke. That's a good joke, and they don't explain it. They don't explain it in the movie. But if this was SpongeBob 2 or 3, they'd be like, oh, his name is Dennis. That's why it's funny. I'm not kidding. They actually do that. They tell you the jokes. They explain the jokes to you, and it's terrible. It's bad. SpongeBob and Patrick then attempt to take their car back by visiting the average Waffle House. In the Waffle House, they do some childish antics that almost get them hurt, beaten, chewed, and spat out. Now, this is the part where I want to quickly remind everyone of the importance of these moments. This is essentially a road trip movie, but unlike most road trip movies, every single stop that they make along the way is important to the central theme of the characters. There's a reason they exist, a reason to actually include what feels like random hiccups in their journeys, but is just beating our heads in with the same point over and over again that the movie wants us to remember by the end. You can't say that about a lot of road trip movies, which you think you should be able to. But screw all of that. Squidward is on to Plankton's evil doings and is then attacked by a mind-controlled Bikini Bottom wasteland. Rest in peace, Squidward, man. Rip to the goat, for real. Back in the Patty Mobile, the boys stop for ice cream in a very nice-looking Florida neighborhood. The ice cream is being given out by a sweet old lady, but a sweet old lady is not a sweet old lady. She's actually a tongue of a giant fish monster. Oh golly, oh gee, that's scary. When they escape the fish monster, they reach a part of their journey that seems impossible. It seems like they won't be able to make it past this point and that they'll need to turn back because they are just kids.
We are kids!
There's no way that they'll be able to make it to Shell City like this. Patrick and SpongeBob break down feeling like failures and believing that they're incapable of a job this size because of them just being kids. I mean, they're kids. How could they even attempt to do something this grand or this heroic? They lack the responsibility, they lack the willpower, and they lack the brains. But Mindy shows up in hopes to get them back on track. She does this by telling the boys that she can use her mermaid powers to make them men. Their kiddish brains actually believe believe that Mindy has magical powers and they're made to be men. God, they're so dumb, so dumb. Kids are so stupid. When believing that they have become men, the two kids foolishly jump into the trench and continue onward. This leads for a glorious song full of energy and incredible moments. Every second of the song is accompanied by visuals animated to the beat, creating a moment truly spectacular. Something I can't say about the third movie's song and dance sequences that feel like low-end trash in comparison to this. When the boys get through the trench, they are stopped in their tracks by Dennis. Dennis quickly ruins their entire newfound manliness by ripping off their crappy mustaches. Dennis, with his simplistic villain ways, is a great way to have SpongeBob and Patrick realize that you can't just become responsible or a man simply because of a mustache.
They were fake?
Of course they were fake!
I mean, sure, you can grow a mustache in 2 seconds if you're an actual man, but that's just a bonus. It takes a lot more to become responsible like an actual man, and these kids need to realize that. Dennis is about to end the lives of these children until he's stomped on by a Cyclops. The Cyclops kidnaps the boys and sticks them in a fishbowl. In this moment, I can't gush over enough. This is one of the very rare moments of SpongeBob when they rip them out of the underwater animated scene and stick them in a real-life scenario. It's uncomfortable and cold and insanely scary. We can see why everyone is so scared of this place because it's so unnatural to everyone that lives in Bikini Bottom. It's not welcoming to fish life. All fish life here is googly-eyed and made to be a prop. And sadly, our boys are next. They're placed in a heat lamp to dry them up and sell them off for $1 in a gas station. SpongeBob and Patrick lay there dying. Genuinely dying. SpongeBob tells Patrick how he thinks that they failed, how he thinks that they didn't accomplish anything. He says they're goofballs, they're kids, how could they ever even attempt this? But it turns out they made it. They made it to the crown. They made it to Shell City, the one place no one ever believed they would make it to. They did. They did it. And with those final moments, SpongeBob and Patrick both accept that and embrace their death, singing together an incredible song of friendship, the Goofy Goober song.
I'm a goofy goober, yeah. You're a goofy goober, yeah. We're all goofy goobers, yeah.
Soon they dry up together, with a final tear in the shape of a heart being their last final moment together. This is probably one of the most emotional moments probably ever put in an animated movie, accompanied by both voice actors putting in some of the greatest performances of their careers, especially from SpongeBob. It's just incredible. But it is not over yet. The camera pans out and the pirates are seen crying, thinking that it's the end of the movie. But don't worry guys, it's not the end of the movie. Their heart-shaped tear causes the sprinklers to go off, saving them and allowing them to go for the crown. The Cyclops attempts to stop them, but all other sea life is saved and gets revenge on his one-eyed ass. The boys then run outside to find themselves on the beach, but needing to get home to Bikini Bottom fast before Mr. Crab fries to death. This is where, oh man, oh I love this moment. This is where David Hasselhoff comes to their aid. This moment is so ungodly funny in ways I don't even think people behind the third one especially even knew why. This movie at the end just includes an insanely random 90s actor who starred in a show on a beach. It's amazing, out of nowhere, and played off with almost zero explanation. In the third movie they include a loved famous actor but without any of the charm of Hasselhoff. Keanu is amazing and I love him, but they simply include him just to recreate the magic of the Hasselhoff moment but without any of the actual creativity this entire sequence has. Soon Dennis comes back and they battle it out and they best him and you know he's gone forever. Hasselhoff then uses his incredible pectorals to launch them quickly into the Krusty Krab and the day is saved. The crown is returned. The day is beautifully saved by our boys. Yes, let's go. Actually no, it's not that easy because Plankton has a plan for this and now even the king is mind controlled with his little bucket hat and this seems like it. This seems like another end for our boys, leading for a discussion between Plankton and SpongeBob. Plankton says that he lost because he's just a dumb kid, which I mean he is. This entire movie we have seen how stupid and dumb he is as a kid, and SpongeBob realizes that that's okay. He's a kid, but he accomplished everything everyone said he couldn't. Even though he's a little goofy, even though he's dumb, even though the ways he accomplishes something is not the most normal, he still does it. He still does it, even when everyone says that he can't. He may be a kid, but he did it. He stuck to his guns and finished what he had to do. This leads for SpongeBob to explode into an incredible goofy goober sequence, SpongeBob completely accepting who he is and owning it with an intense amount of confidence. He's not wrong for being a kid. In fact, he's better for it because he knows that he's a kid. He knows himself, which is more than most people can say about themselves. I'm looking at you, the person watching. Stop being a fake ass person. Accept who you are and grow up without really growing up. SpongeBob saves the day, blasting off the helmets of everyone and freeing their mind-controlled lives. The sequence ends with Plankton being stepped on once again, just like the beginning of the movie. Crab is returned back to normal and finally gives SpongeBob his promotion as manager. It's a beautiful, gorgeous ending, leading for a smile from ear to ear. God, I just love this movie. I love everything about it. The animation, the voice acting, the editing, the directing, the story, the message, the colors, the feeling, the humor, the music. It's just all too good. Especially if you grew up on SpongeBob and always wanted more out of Bikini Bottom. This movie travels through the entirety of Bikini Bottom until we are no longer in Bikini Bottom. It feels like an ultimate tour of the underwater SpongeBob universe. On the surface, this movie can seem like just a goofy road trip movie in which the boys come across a bunch of hiccups, but every hiccup further proves to us that SpongeBob and Patrick are just kids this entire movie. No matter how hard they try to act like they can handle the responsibilities that come with being an adult, they blow bubbles, they do petty in-your-face moments, they wear fake mustaches, they stop for ice cream, they drive a sandwich, and they are naive. They are kids, and they will always be kids. But like SpongeBob himself says loudly into the microphone, that's okay. This entire movie just perfectly encapsulates what a perfect ending for the series this is. It feels finite. It wraps up everything in a way that a movie should. This feels like the end of SpongeBob and the end of his journey. It's too good. Genuinely, it's way too good of a movie based off of a cartoon on Nickelodeon, but that's what it is. This is Steven's masterpiece. It's the end to his character, but it's not actually the end. There are 2 more movies, and they just don't live up to this. They don't hold a torch, a candle, or even a mini Bic lighter to the absolute perfection of this movie, which is why I think it's time we talk about SpongeBob SquarePants, Sponge Out of Water. Released in 2015, this movie represents Steven's return to the series, but not really in a way. He's not directing this movie, and he's not really writing it. Instead, directing it is Paul Tibbitt, who has worked on the series since the beginning, even helping writing on this movie. Because of Paul, this movie stays the most true to SpongeBob as a brand than the next movie that follows. It's because of Paul that this movie feels like an episode of SpongeBob in the wackiness and the goofiness, even though it may not contain the cleverness of the humor like Steven's work, but at times it can feel just like a classic episode of SpongeBob. But it's that classic SpongeBob feeling that actually works against the movie. This movie was and is marketed as the SpongeBob crew coming into the real world and interacting with the real world. I mean, the name is Sponge Out of Water, which means, you know, they're leaving the water, but instead they're leaving it in a 3D CGI form and interacting with more humans than they ever have before. That's what's crazy about it. Basically, this movie simply ignores that the first movie even exists. I mean, SpongeBob and Patrick were out in the real world for a long time in the first movie, and early episodes of SpongeBob even had gags where real life of them looked like actual real life versions of these characters. But in this movie, it's adding a third option where they're 3D CGI characters, because that's what kids like. That's what they like, you know? Not only are they 3D CGI, but they're superheroes, because it's the early 2010s and superheroes were having a gigantic boom in movies. So everything needed to be superhero-like at the time. And the trailer suggests that it will be a majority of this movie, but it's not. It's not at all. It's the very last 30 minutes of the whole movie. The very last. And while the normal majority of this movie is just a nice 2D animated SpongeBob movie, it feels like a boring slog because the entire time you're waiting to get to the big draw of the movie, the big premise. This movie is 2 movies, and the first part feels incredibly disconnected from the second part. It's a mess with terrible pacing and almost no point. The movie begins with a brand new real-life pirate scene, just like the first movie, but instead this pirate is going to be an actual character throughout the movie. Played by Antonio Banderas, we see the pirate finding the book of SpongeBob or something. I don't know, it's a wacky premise. Basically, this real-life pirate grabs this book about SpongeBob and writes in it to steal the secret formula, but it's also a book about SpongeBob's life that's happening in real time and leads for them to be interacting eventually in real life. I can't really explain it well. I don't know, it's confusing, but it's a fun premise that doesn't really go anywhere. It has the bones and originality to be a fun storytelling device, but like I said, it doesn't really go anywhere. They have the pirate guy writing in his own little parts of the story to like make happen in real life, but It's like very lame. It's very, very lame. And SpongeBob does the same thing, but it's also very lame. Also, what even is this book? Who put this book here on this island? I don't get it. Like, what is the book? Once the pirate guy steals this random book from this random island, he goes back to his boat where it turns out to be a bunch of talking birds. These talking birds are incredibly annoying. These birds exist simply for new children with their 3-year-old brains because, you know, they're animated talking birds, but they are annoying. They have no point in this movie except just to be annoying. I think back to the first movie with all those pirates and how there's just a random parrot who says like one goofy line and that's it, instead of just like being an annoying ass little animated bird.
I promise not to sing!
Basically, the entire live action interaction here is annoying. In the first one, it's a bunch of random pirates going to see a movie about SpongeBob. They're fans. They don't matter. They don't exist. It's just a way to get us into the movie and feel more grand than ever before. But here, for some reason, this pirate has to be a character, which could be interesting, but you get his character at the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie, and that's about it for him. You don't really know who this pirate is. You don't know anything about him, except that he's a pirate that wants the Krabby Patty formula to make some money. That's it. Okay, cool. When he opens up the book to read it to the birds around him, we begin our first part of the movie. It opens up between a battle of SpongeBob and Plankton, which, like, you know, didn't we just do this? Didn't we just do this? While there is no reason to connect these movies with any underlying consistency, it still feels annoying that this movie completely ignores the fact that the first one even exists. The movie, just like the first, features a story of Plankton trying to steal the Krabby Patty formula, and sure, this movie is over a decade later from the first one, but you're really just gonna start it with the same exact kind of plot. Basically, the first 20 minutes is just a slapstick action sequence between both restaurant employees. They fight until Plankton is pretty much about to grab the formula, but then, oh no, out of nowhere, the formula just completely disappears. Oh no, where did it go? I have no idea. It could never be that guy, right? This entire opening sequence it's okay. It's fine. There's some funny jokes for people that grew up on SpongeBob. Finland. There's a lot of random humor and puns, but absolutely no cleverness that the first one has. There's no joke that subverts your expectations, there's no joke that fools you, or even a visual gag. Or well, if it is a visual gag, it's immediately explained to you.
Plankton is your enemy! So is he an anemone or plankton?
Well, someone had to do it.
Soon after the formula disappears, there's riots for Krabby Patties. SpongeBob defends Plankton because he knows that he didn't actually take it this time, and he runs away with Plankton to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, in real life, the pirate guy writes a fake ending for the book and the birds get mad at him.
You better keep reading, Mr. Pirate, or else.
I mean, okay, yeah, sure, I really just don't care. I just don't get how the first movie begins so strong. It has so much character and purpose built up in the first 10 minutes alone. It sets up SpongeBob's desire and conflict. But in this movie, here's a setup, conflict, joking conflict, desire, then conflict, and desire, and conflict again. It's a messy, unorganized mess. It doesn't explain any character. The new characters that we meet, it barely like shows us any personality about them. They're very one-dimensional, and it's annoying. The riot in Bikini Bottom continues for a very long time, even having Sandy the Squirrel go insane because of it. SpongeBob and Plankton try to figure out where the formula went, and they go to Patrick. But in this movie, out of nowhere, Patrick betrays SpongeBob, all for a gag. It's a pointless gag that honestly just feels cold and distant. This entire beginning sequence of rioting, betrayal, and craziness would be funny in a longer episode of SpongeBob, but as a movie, in a movie theater, after the greatness of the first, it's just so boring. All of SpongeBob's friends don't really act like his friends. Simply because they think that he stole the Krabby Patty formula, they act like they never knew SpongeBob as a person for the entire time that they've known him. When you go back to the first movie, these characters may not be the best towards SpongeBob, but they still act like that they know him, like they truly know him, and that they've been around him forever. Here, they just feel like they just met for the first time and they don't really know each other. It's so stupid. There is no overall character arc for SpongeBob. In the first one, the boys had to find and receive an item to save the town. In this one, they must do the same, but they do the same without any semblance of learning anything towards the end. They do the same without going through something that will affect them and have them appreciate or realize something about themselves. There's no reason for this conflict to even wrap up in the end, because in the end, all the characters stay the exact same as they did in the beginning. It just feels like a filler movie. It feels like none of these characters have any depth in them, even though these are characters that have existed for 20, 25 years. And since they have existed for 25 years, you would think that they would be given something new for their characters. You don't watch a movie adaptation of a TV show to see a longer version of the TV show with slightly better animation. You watch a movie to experience a story. And if this movie has almost every single SpongeBob character in it, why doesn't a single one of them have any story? They begin and end this movie as the exact same person. The first one doesn't do that. It doesn't do that for SpongeBob, for Patrick, or Mr. Krabs, or even Squidward for his tiny role. Each character in that movie comes out of the end truly learning something and being a better person because of it. Not a single character in this movie does that. And without that, without a message or a lesson, or a story, you would think this movie at least replaces it with good comedy. And it kind of does, but it is few and far between. Between all the gags is filler. It's messing around, it's running away, it's yelling at each other. It can be entertaining, but it's dumb entertainment, but not dumb entertainment in the same way this is. And that's important. We see SpongeBob and Plankton alone together outside of Bikini Bottom. And now here would be a great way for him and Plankton to have a conversation between each other and grow as characters. But instead, it just becomes an opportunity for a gag without any takeaway. Yes, throughout the movie, Plankton does learn a tiny superficial message about teamwork, but it comes from nowhere and simply grows with runtime, not with the actual story, which is just lazy. I can't pinpoint moments to you when Plankton actually grows, when Plankton actually learns something, and when he actually does something for other people. He's very contradicting to himself of when he wants to be in a good mood or an evil mood. It just makes no sense. We also get a whole sequence that is like a redo of the original F is for Friends song, but shorter. This all leads for an incredibly drawn out sequence with Plankton and SpongeBob trying to sneak into the chum bucket and reach Karen to make a time machine. It's all a 15-minute long sequence that just exists to pad time and create a couple jokes with no groundwork. Soon when they create their time machine though, we get a lot of fun sequences of time travel, which I actually like quite a bit. They may be short, but they are very enjoyable simply because when they're traveling through time, the art style is trippy and the music accompanying it is very fun. When they travel through time a lot, they run into a dolphin named Bubbles that apparently watches time and space. Bubbles is the best part of the movie. It's so wacky to the point where it's just insanely enjoyable to laugh at. He plays a larger part in the movie later, but I wish that there was more Bubbles in this movie. Back in the real world, the pirate reaches land on a beach to set up shop and create a food truck stand with his new stolen Krabby Patty formula. This eventually scares all of the birds away though, thank God, because I just hate them so much. I think these birds are the worst addition to any of these movies. They simply just exist to annoy you. That's all they do. Back in the 2D world of SpongeBob, SpongeBob is about to get sacrificed for Krabby Patties, but then Bubbles, the dolphin, shows up and says that he'll take him to land to save the day. This entire sequence is just so lame. It feels so boring. It's just the ultimate padding of a movie. All the characters that have betrayed SpongeBob and Plankton from the very beginning all of a sudden just are like, okay, we'll come with you. It feels very disconnected. It doesn't feel tight. It doesn't feel contained. The writing kind of sucks. But soon, don't worry, here we go, boys. Here we go. The second half of the movie finally happens, and the SpongeBob crew is transformed into a 3D CGI form for the real world. Here we get a bunch of antics and shenanigans where they interact with beach life. They see people laying down and they call them whales, and they interact with feet and toes and cotton candy. They just walk around and, interact with things. That's about it. It just feels so different from the first half of the movie. This is just a brand new, entirely different movie. But if this was going to be the main draw of the movie, why didn't it happen earlier into the movie? Instead, all this begins an hour into the movie, an entire hour. And mind you that there's only like 30 minutes left of runtime. And while I might find it cute that all of our SpongeBob characters are interacting with real life people in like a goofy, dumb way, it still doesn't feel worth it. It feels like the journey to get here was just so pointless. So throughout all of these antics on the beach, they eventually reach the pirate guy who stole the formula. But the guy is one step ahead of them and takes a page out of the book and writes them onto a dangerous bird island. SpongeBob then figures out what is going on and how he's been doing all this stuff and the weird stuff's happening. So he uses a page himself to write all of them becoming superpowers to overcome the pirate guy. The entire crew now has amazing cool superpowers like it's a Marvel movie. Wow, that's so cool, amazing, that's great. Superpowers, yay! And then out of nowhere we see the epic rap battle Battles of History guys for a second because they create a song for the end credits. I like that. It's best part of the movie. I love these guys. I'm glad to see them. But with these superpowers, we just get a very long action sequence where each character shows off what power they have. Each power relates to them in some way in their personality. It's a long sequence that doesn't really have much to talk about. It feels like a drawn out Tom and Jerry skit, and it's kind of fun, but you could just skip to the very end of this movie just for this part and get the exact same experience as watching the whole movie. Eventually they of course beat the pirate guy, and Plankton has a realization about being good at the end for almost no reason. Literally like 5 minutes ago he was writing himself with the intention of doing something evil.
I'll show you a happy ending.
But then just nothing happens with that. Like, okay. His character kind of just falls off in the end, and he has no actual arc, no actual purpose to the story. He's just there to say evil lines, but not do anything actually evil. Okay. Overall, this movie is a half-baked attempt at a SpongeBob movie. It features little to no actual point or story while separating itself into 2 whole different movies entirely. The first hour of the movie isn't bad, it's not, but it just feels like a really long episode that could have been on Nickelodeon. There's some funny random humor just like the current stage of SpongeBob it released at, but it's not anything insanely special. It repeats the arc of Plankton wanting to steal the formula, but kind of just abandons it before it ever reaches any type of conclusion whatsoever in favor of a live action villain who just exists to be a goofy villain to fill the quota and not have to create an actual story for. SpongeBob doesn't have an arc and doesn't leave the story with a message or anything new to affect him. And while I don't think every story needs to have a lesson learned by the end, what replaces that aspect for SpongeBob as a character is nothing. All of his friends turn on him and betray him simply to just be part of the crew again when it becomes the most convenient. They never have any reconciliation or growth or even joke growth or gags. It all just fizzles out into nothingness so a new movie can begin to market itself in trailers. And that marketing was successful because this movie made an incredible amount of money. And when you watch the movie, it is very obvious how almost every scene in the ending is simply made for a trailer. This is just a pointless return to the theater for SpongeBob. It's a movie that didn't need to exist, but I'm not upset at it for being a thing. While it doesn't hold a candle to the first movie, it doesn't trample upon SpongeBob as an identity and a character. It doesn't do anything new, but also doesn't do anything necessarily bad. It doesn't stomp all over the creator's grave and spit on its tombstone, is what I'm trying to say, which is exactly what the next movie does. SpongeBob SquarePants Sponge on the Run is an absolutely terrible movie in almost every sense of the word terrible. It hides its ugliness inside a cute, beautifully animated exterior to distract you from the fact that this movie only exists to sell you on new SpongeBob spin-offs. The movie contains no heart, soul, or anything worthwhile to even justify its advertisements. This movie released in 2020 on Paramount Plus as one of the first Paramount Plus originals to be featured on the new streaming service. And because of this movie, I don't subscribe to Paramount Plus. That's how bad of a taste it left in my mouth. The movie's trailer released very shortly after the death of Steven, and it came with a new marketing promise and a new origin of SpongeBob at a place called Camp Coral. It's just how quick they came out with this trailer after his death that it almost seemed like they were waiting for him to die just to release this. The movie's trailer also brought us a familiar storyline from an old classic episode into the forefront, with this movie's story seemingly being centered around Gary, SpongeBob's snail, and him going missing and SpongeBob needing to find him. This is all yet another genius distraction. It pulled from many people's nostalgia about the Gary Come Home song and everything. Heck, it even had hundreds hoping for a new version of this very song for a new emotional roller coaster. Spoiler alert, it doesn't have any of that. The outer husk of this movie serves to trick people into believing that this movie will be an emotional powerhouse between SpongeBob and Gary. It makes you think that this will show how much SpongeBob loves his pet and that he will do anything to get him home back safe. And it's nothing like that. The Gary and SpongeBob dynamic of this movie is an absolute afterthought. I think Gary has a total of 4 seconds of screen time in the whole movie and only interacts with SpongeBob maybe twice. And yet, that's supposed to be the driving force of the movie. Not only that, but this movie also reuses the concept of Neptune and has him renamed as Poseidon. And it completely disregards how genius the first incarnation of this type of character was. This movie honestly just completely redoes a lot of what the first did, even copying the road trip format situation in a much more boring way. This movie, I honestly just don't even want to dive into it because of how much I despise it, like truly despise. But I'm here. I'm doing this for you. the person watching. We've come this far, so we might as well go all the way, right? Right? Oh god. The movie opens with a new SpongeBob narrator welcoming us into Bikini Bottom. The animation here is stunning. It is. The detail, the lighting, the claymation feel, it's all absolutely perfect. If they were ever going to ditch 2D SpongeBob art style, this is honestly a great way to adapt it into a 3D version. The narrator shows each of our classic characters until we land on SpongeBob. And here, right here, is where my compliments for this movie ends. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, this movie begins with SpongeBob and Patrick simply just yelling at each other to annoy Squidward. There's nothing going on today like a new promotion or anything. No, it's just funny to be loud. That's the joke.
Good morning, SpongeBob!
Good morning, Patrick!
Good morning, SpongeBob!
Good morning, Patrick!
We didn't get a tiny montage of SpongeBob and Gary hanging out. It's a little cute, but it's sadly the only moment in time in this movie where SpongeBob and Gary have any bonding emotional moment. Honestly, I'm not even going to compare this aspect to SpongeBob movies or anything SpongeBob related. I'm going to compare this to Phineas and Ferb across the second dimension. Remember that movie and how incredible it is at showing a dynamic between the brothers and Perry? It opens up with an adorable sequence almost the exact same way as this SpongeBob movie. But throughout the Phineas and Ferb movie, we see the dynamic of the brothers and Perry tested and strengthened in new ways. When Perry is lost to the boys and found again, there are actual moments to reflect their relationship that they've had for all of these years. This movie that came out 10 years later doesn't have that. Instead, it features the disgusting advertisement I so very much despise. Soon, SpongeBob goes to start his day at the Krusty Krab, and we see Plankton once again plotting to take the formula. Yeah, I know. For the third time, the base of the plot is Plankton stealing the Krabby Patty formula. But this time, he realizes in order to do that, he should attack SpongeBob directly. We also see Sandy, who introduces a robot character into this movie who just acts as a small gag character. The robot is thrown in the trash by Mr. Krabs and adopted by Karen and Plankton. And once again, I just want to talk about the first 10 minutes of yet another movie. So far, neither of the two movies that have come after the first have packed as much purpose to the story as the first one did in the first 10 minutes. Honestly, even if the second one's intro was messy, at least it had things going on. But most of the runtime here is padded with boring, slow pacing, very slow pacing. Out of all three of the movies, this one feels the absolute slowest. It makes the first 10 minutes feel like 30, when almost nothing has even happened. At night when the Krusty Krab closes, Plankton is close to taking the formula, but is foiled again by SpongeBob. And this has him realize that maybe he should actually finally attack SpongeBob this time. We then get a very lame transition into King Poseidon. So we go to Poseidon in his cool city or whatever, and we get a complete redo of all of the Neptune scenes from the first movie. Complete with the same sire character and the same issue of insecurity. This Poseidon guy has a wrinkle, and his issue is that he loses his snails that keep him without wrinkles. So instead of Neptune with the crown to hide his baldness, it's snails to stop wrinkles. This Neptune feels lifeless and hollow. Sure, he has a deep insecurity of appearance, but he doesn't carry the same contradicting nature as the other Neptune did. When Neptune freaks out, it's a bellowing cry that can be heard throughout Bikini Bottom. When this Poseidon guy freaks out, it's like a little baby crying.
Here it comes.
There's almost no reaction and no emotion coming from him. I don't even know if he's actually even that insecure. He seems like just more bothered than anything. Soon Plankton sees this as an opportunity to take SpongeBob's snail and send it to Neptune. I mean, Poseidon, yeah, whatever. And well, Plankton just does that. I mean, like, okay, he just takes Gary's snail and I guess he's missing already. There wasn't really much like build up to it. SpongeBob then instantly notices that he's missing 30 seconds later and freaks out and tries to find him. During all this freak out, we get our first advertisement for the baby SpongeBob show. We see him at Camp Coral as a little baby at a little summer camp where he meets baby Gary. Oh, so adorable. It's so cute. It's so adorable. These little babies. Wow, you're really doing this in this movie, huh? You're really doing this. Your first emotional moment of SpongeBob losing Gary is your advertisement. Thanks. Thanks, I hate it. But like, this advertisement itself is honestly pretty harmless. It's a little annoying, but I could put up with it if I didn't know that the spinoff existed. It just seems like a small moment in the movie. But later on in the movie, it gets way worse. It gets way worse and you can't ignore it. Patrick comes over and plans to help SpongeBob find Gary. So basically it's like the beginning of the first movie as well, but instead of going to find a crown, they go to find Gary on the same type of road trip. Plankton then uses that one robot that they have to drive the boys far away. On the road trip, the boys argue and the runtime is padded yet again. Their conversations have no weight to them, they don't matter, they just argue for no reason. They don't argue throughout the movie and have to like come to a better friendship by the end. They just argue here. It's completely out of nowhere. Meanwhile, there's some rioting over the lack of Krabby Patties at the Krusty Krab, you know, classic rioting in the last two movies. Back at the road trip, the boys hit their first stop. This stop is in some desert town seemingly in real life, but here's where we meet Keanu Reeves as the Sage. This part, like I've already mentioned, is an attempt to be like the Hasselhoff stuff, but instead, Sage is an actual character that appears throughout the movie to help the boys. It's all played off as some random joke, but not in the same vein of random as Hasselhoff. The Sage basically moves the plot along and helps the boys whenever they seem stuck in their journey, but it doesn't contribute to anything worthwhile in their character arcs or story. It just seems whenever they hit a road bump, the Sage gives the answer. They don't really have to like actually search for something. For example, when Mindy stops to help them seemingly out of nowhere, it's beneficial to their overarching kid-like story. Here, the Sage character just helps them to help them. That's it. SpongeBob and Patrick here are instead just dumb, and they don't know how to get through anything by themselves. They're not even so dumb to the point where they fool themselves into actual success. They are just dumb. They don't fumble into success even with their dumbness. They are just dumb to be dumb because it's funny. This is really where the movie just falls off the rails. It simply just becomes random to be random, with a character called El Diablo approaching with random editing that thinks it's funny.
El Diablo the Wicked approaches. El Diablo, El Diablo, El Diablo.
It just tries way too hard. It's so embarrassing. Oh, and here's the best part, the greatest part, a dance song sequence about this character featuring Snoop Dogg. It's a long, drawn out, stupid, live action dance sequence that doesn't have anything to do with SpongeBob or Patrick. It doesn't need to be in the SpongeBob movie. This could be in any other kind of movie. This could be in a Disney Channel original movie. It has nothing to do with SpongeBob or Patrick. Nothing. It's just here to sell a song to kids to listen to when they're done watching the movie. That's so fun. The El Diablo character shows up and is played by Danny Trejo. They fight and battle with him until they beat him and escape the saloon. And it turns out that all of this wasn't real. It was just a vision. Okay. Alright. The Sage character says that they lack courage, and this vision is important for that, but that has nothing to do with them and their conflict and what they're struggling with as characters in this movie. From the beginning of the movie, they don't have a lack of courage, and by the end of the movie, they don't have a lack of courage. So I don't get what this courage sequence was about. It doesn't really play into anything. That was never set up beforehand, and it doesn't play into them towards the end of the movie. Courage is just not an aspect that matters for this movie, so simply that entire annoying vision sequence truly has no point. But in order to move the plot along, the Sage character just simply literally shows where Gary is exactly and what is happening to them. The mystery of finding Gary and going on a long journey to get him back was just solved because they know exactly where he is and he's just like there. They can go get him whenever they want. Think back to the rumors of the crown being at Shell City.
My crown is in the forbidden Shell City!
But yet the boys have no idea what Shell City is or what it looks like. And when they finally reach it, it's so incredibly powerful and used for one of the greatest emotional moments all over reaching the crown. But this movie, with the opportunity to have something powerful like that about SpongeBob reuniting with Gary and finding him and all of that, just doesn't happen. It's just not possible because the movie just simply doesn't care. It doesn't matter when they'll find Gary or how they'll find Gary or anything because it's just guaranteed to be successful for these boys. There's no stakes, there's no emotion, no importance because they can easily just reach Gary anytime they want. There's no mystique, no drama, no journey. The entire road trip journey ends very shortly after this because they reach the city that Gary is held in. And mind you, they reach this like 40 minutes into the movie. And with this movie's title being Sponge on the Run, you would think it would be a road trip movie with hiccups and stops and all the works, but no, there was just one stop. Actually, wait, technically in the movie story, it wasn't wasn't even a stop or a hiccup. It was just a vision. So actually, they never stop or have a hiccup. They just immediately reach their destination. They reach their destination less than halfway through the movie. Then the entire movie just grinds to a massive halt in order to pad with montage fun in this city. In this city, just for the boys to gamble for like 10 minutes and mess around for 20 minutes. Oh my god, why? What is the point of this movie? What is the point of this movie? They distract themselves instead of going for Gary immediately, because I mean, if they went for Gary instantly, the movie would just be over, and that's not movie length. Also, I just want to note that in this sequence, we can see a sign for the Krusty Krab, which just, why? Huh? What is the point of including this as a visual or anything? Why is there another Krusty Krab in Bikini Bottom? Plankton could just go here whenever he wants and get the formula. So why does he bother with all this Gary nonsense when there's another Krusty Krab without SpongeBob apparently? Why does he go after SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs? There's no point. There's no point. Why is this here? Why is this in this movie? I don't get it. I don't get it. Anyways, after all of the montage excitement, the boys attempt to go see Poseidon. They eventually reach him and Gary in a lounge area, but are thrown in jail for trying to steal Gary back. Meanwhile, all of SpongeBob's friends back in Bikini Bottom notice that SpongeBob is gone off to save him. Whoa! And they go after him in the Pattymobile. Yeah, that Pattymobile. And they try to play it off as a nod to the first movie, but instead feels like a lazy way to get to the city. And if it was a nod to the first movie, that just begs more annoying questions than anything. I just don't... Nothing in this movie makes sense when you try to think about it for more than a second. The friends then reach the city when the boys are being put through court, and this is where I start to condemn the movie. I just fully condemn. I hold a holy cross to the movie. What I've been talking about from the very beginning, the dreaded advertisement. For the next 20 minutes, the movie simply halts, ceases, stops, everything to advertise the SpongeBob Baby Show. This whole court sequence is supposed to be, or as it's presented, it's supposed to be a way to convince Poseidon how much Gary means to SpongeBob and how SpongeBob is a good person. But the Gary stuff completely takes a backseat during all of this and doesn't really exist. Instead, every single one of SpongeBob's friends show up and each individually gives a little baby backstory at the Camp Coral place. They literally come up one by one, showing their little baby designs and showing flashbacks at Camp Coral. And none of it really shows how SpongeBob is a good person. It just shows that he used to be a baby. It's disgusting. Genuinely disgusting. All of this, every single second has no place whatsoever with the rest of the movie. These friends giving flashbacks about SpongeBob haven't even been in the movie. These characters have not been in the movie. They have barely been seen. So the only time we see them is when they advertise the spin-off show by fakely talking about how much they love SpongeBob. Now, the worst part about all of this, and I just want to talk about this aspect as well, is that the Camp Coral show, even if it's being advertised in this disgusting way, you would think it would look like this, right? Well, no, it doesn't. It's uglier. It's disgusting. It looks nothing like it. It's so cheap, so muddy, and doesn't reflect how the movie looks at all. Like, of course, it's a smaller budget than the movie, so they can't fully add as much detail. But come on, this is just bad. This is unholy. Anyways, this whole sequence is the worst. It's the worst. It's the worst thing to ever come from all three of these movies, and each flashback goes on for way too long. It has no effect on any other second in the movie and has no point being in this movie. It's a faceless attempt at hiding an advertisement, and I will always despise this till the day I die. After this sequence, the gang then steals Gary away, leading for a little battle between Poseidon's guards and them. At the end of the lame action, we get a fake feeling speech where SpongeBob just says how much he loves his friends. And granted, most of his friends just appeared 20 minutes ago for flashbacks. So wow, they were so important in the movie, totally. We then see Poseidon talk about his insecurity and then letting himself just be free and open and, yeah, whatever. This entire conclusion is just so unearned. I just want to talk about how insane the ending of the first movie was. I mean, even the end of the second at least had a cute nod where the pirate guy was the pirate of the opening song from the show. Here it's just nothing. Nothing really happens. It's like, okay, the movie's over. Woo. And to top it all off with a poop flavored cherry, they place an in memory of Steven Hillenburg at the end. No, you don't get to. You don't get to do that. You don't get to literally defile everything SpongeBob grew to be in just one simple movie and act like it's okay. What makes me so angry is that they did this and they honestly just stole his first movie and redid it in their own coat of paint. They changed the art style so it's not obvious, but this entire movie just has so many ideas and shots just ripped from the first. I mean, just look at this. You can't hide it. You literally stole Steven's masterpiece and took a giant dump on it. You thought you were slick by disguising it in gorgeous animation, but I see right through you. You messed with a legacy that could have ended perfectly. I would have been fine with just a second movie even existing because it wasn't as harmful as this movie is. This unofficial trilogy of SpongeBob just represents how out of touch the current state of Nickelodeon is with SpongeBob and how it most likely will continue its downward trajectory. The first movie is a powerhouse that represents the end of a beloved character with a story so perfect many filmmakers just dream of reaching that kind of magnum opus. The second was okay. It was a pointless return to the theater that proved to be insanely successful due to easy marketing. And this is just the worst. Out of all three movies, the only one to have a clear-cut story was the first. It presented you a story about SpongeBob that isn't viewed as responsible by anyone around him and consistently beat that into your head for almost every single second of the runtime. Almost every single second of the movie has a purpose. It all contributes towards the ending, towards the theme, towards the message. The second, nothing. It's just a goofy time for no reason. And the third, full of fake messages and lessons that exist for 2 minutes of runtime and are never explored again. The difference between the road trip of the third and the road trip of the first is that there's no point for the third to even attempt to be a road trip. Not a single place these characters arrive at leaves them with something new when they reach the end of their journey. But you can look at every single stop in the first as a perfect way to build towards the finale. Steven Hillenburg created and ended SpongeBob the exact way he wanted to, at least to me. He created a beautiful character and a beautiful story and a beautiful ending. Everything after that, I just simply don't believe is worthy of the name SpongeBob SquarePants. I will forever be grateful to the legacy that Steven created and the message he wanted so many kids growing up to receive from this goofy little sponge. He wanted us to stay kids forever, even when we needed to grow up. Anyways, thanks for listening.